Let's talk about Jehovah's Witnesses for a minute. I was an innocent child. I liked Halloween. I loved my family. We had a good family. My mom was pregnant at 16, got married because she was pregnant, but she did the right thing. She wanted to love and raise her child, and she made the decision. She had a second child right after. Drama. So she has 2 kids, and then she has me a few years later. So she's at 3. I'm about 3 years old. I think my brother he was born, I was about 3 when he was born. Anyway, at some point in that time frame, my mom became Jehovah's Witness. I had experienced Christmas, I had experienced Halloween, but only briefly. I can't remember the exact year my mom became a witness, but I know we went to the 1975 conventions, assemblies, and basically the big hoopla about the world's going to end and everybody's going to live in paradise and blah, blah, blah never happened. And I remember being a small child, and I remember thinking, somewhere around then I was like, they'll have to make it happen. I wasn't young enough to process what my thought system meant by that or how actually predictive it would be. What does it mean to be a child in Jehovah's Witness religion? It is like very strange. My dad refused to be a witness. Our family was immediately split in 2. And even though I knew personally that my mom wasn't racist, because she couldn't associate with anybody who drank or smoked, basically cut off. My family's biracial, and it basically cut off half our family, a little bit over half of our family. And they started creating a smaller and smaller social circle. Halloween went bye-bye. I loved Halloween. The school didn't know what to do with me. I became very shy and reclusive because we were the weirdos. We were those strange ones. And we were supposed to revile everyone, like they were all worldly and we were better than them. And I never bought into that. I felt worse than them. What was it like as far as time? We had to study something called the Watchtower. It was 2 hours for the Watchtower meeting on Sundays. You're supposed to go out and service on Saturdays. You're supposed to have 1 hour meeting on Tuesday nights and a 2-hour meeting on Thursday nights. And for each of these, you needed to, for every hour that you're in a meeting, it's a half an hour of study before you get there. And you're supposed to comment when you're there. And for me, it was confusing and awful. It was a lot of loneliness. You're supposed to have your family and your social circle. And I remember just being so poor compared to some of the other witnesses, and they would bring us food. I mean, some of us were the same level of poor, and we were even less poor than some people. But there was a real dichotomy in the church. There were these ones that had all this money, and now I hear some of them are millionaires. They have all this money and they just like trickle down. I remember getting in my 20s, I got a job with the Jehovah's Witness of I was paid minimum wage $7 an hour, for real. Some of the things were fun, some of the socializing was fun, but it would be no different from play dates and the other stuff that you do. They hold themselves to. There wouldn't be as much alcohol. Like there weren't as many. I think one thing I noticed when I got older and I separated from the Jehovah's Witnesses was that definitely people drank a lot more and a lot more pot. Like no pot at any Jehovah's Witness function. And I don't really hang around with cigarette smokers, so I don't have a huge problem with that in real life, but that was another thing they shunned. We couldn't have birthdays. And that didn't make any sense because the Bible never specifically said not to have birthdays. It just said the only 2 examples were bad ones. And I was like, and so they made it a personal choice thing, but they also they always put these personal choice things wrapped in a guilt wrapper. Like if you choose that, you will be scorned. It wasn't fun. You have a borderline mom that's queen. It's pro and con. Anytime you're in public, you're supposed to be perfect. Be perfect, behave perfect, make her look good. When you're alone, she would just roll into this degradation. She would just rip me to shreds emotionally. And this would be us one-on-one. There would be nobody around hearing this or seeing this, and I would be empty, a shell, when she was done doing what she did. But I did love my mom, and I think she did her best given her situation. given how young she was, and then she got involved with a cult, and they won't let you go. They won't let you go. Like, I got out only with her help. I got out with her help. But if I hadn't had her help, would it have been as easy for me to get out? Probably not. So you see, that's why I have a loving relationship with my mom, even though she had borderline personality disorder and she had all these struggles. She helped me so many times in my life. But there were times when you're just ripped to shreds. We're growing up and everything in school's awkward and awful. Like, I do have two really good friends because we're the smarty pants of the high school, and I get this full ride scholarship because I'm so smart. But the Jehovah's Witnesses taught me you're not supposed to go to college. I still struggle. It's like I get so close to getting my degree and then I stop. I get so close to getting my degree and then I stopped. As you get older, 5 years pass or so, it depends on the college, you have to retake your classes. So I'm still there, I'm still stuck in time. So it was a big cacophony of things happened. My mom, in my junior year of high school, she decides she's going, well, slightly before that, she decided she was going to college. And my mom was a bit cutting edge. She's like, this computer programming stuff, it's going to be big. She goes and she gets her computer, she gets a double associate's degree. She's like in accounting and computer programming. She did it. Like, she had 4 kids and she did it. She went to college with her sons. And I was so proud of her, I really was. And so all of a sudden she's divorcing my dad. And all of a sudden she's writing a letter to the church that she's done. I didn't believe, and if you are a Jehovah's Witness leaving that religion, you don't have to write a letter. F them. You don't have to do jack. You just leave. And if they come to your house, say, if you come to my house again trying to get me to come back, I will call the police. You are trespassing. Don't mess. My mom throws all the cards up in the air. And we moved down to downstate into Michigan. She was talking about going back to those religious meetings and getting involved in stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, so now I can't have Christmas again? I'm 16 years old. Like, I love Christmas. I mean, I don't decorate. Don't ask me to decorate. But I still love Christmas. And if no one's with me, I will go out and celebrate Christmas by myself. You can't deny a child their Christmases. It'll just backfire and they'll just make up for all of them in the future. But it felt like it was getting close to Christmas and we were debating if she was going to start returning meetings. This is from my memory, but everything's it's probably several weeks meshed into one thought. But anyway, we were discussing, is she going to go back? And then will we celebrate Christmas? Will I have to go back? And at some point in my life, she had said, when you're 16, you get to decide. Well, at that point, I was 16. And she's like, well, do you want to go back? And I'm like, oh, no, Mom, I do not ever want to go back. But, a couple times I did think about it because I got into my 20s. I was moved back up to the country. I was around them again. I think I tried studying and I was like, there's the child. It was actually a disabled child in the background screaming his head off and we couldn't study. And I was like, that's a sign that he's trying to warn me, run, girl, run. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't study with them. I couldn't go back to it. You get a lot of pressure because you're finally around your family again and you're like, family, yay, yay, yay. And when you hang out, you do stuff together, but there's certain limits because they're Jehovah's Witnesses and you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be that and you're not supposed to want to do Christmas. I wonder why I have so much resentment against Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's because I look around and some people that had their whole lives taken away. Like, you're not supposed to get married unless blah, 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 blah. You're not supposed to date. You're not supposed to this and that. And some people end up getting married, not having kids, not even having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And it breaks my heart. Or they get married and maybe they go, but maybe they want to stop going and the witnesses won't let them. And they're just living a good life. They're not out there being maniacs. They're not out there robbing banks. When you're in the Jehovah's Witness religion, they tell you, oh my God, everything is scary. Everyone who leaves turns to, they become uber slutty, drug users, alcoholics. Well, sometimes from the backlash of all the psychological abuse of being in the Jehovah's Witnesses, that actually does happen. It's sort of like a ricochet action. When a teen finally escapes, they go wild because they've been denied everything. They've had no socialization with anyone other than the cult members. And what defines a cult, one of the things that defines a cult, is that you can't leave. They will not let you leave, not peacefully. Not, we'll be friends, you have your opinion, you have mine. I have some relatives that are a little bit more mellow like that, but they're not supposed to be. Jehovah's Witnesses have always been anti-gay, LGBTQ. No. The racism was quite deep. Bethel itself was mostly black men Bethel is their headquarters. It's there where they do all the printing, but mostly black men who have to take a vow of poverty, and the white men up in the upper echelons that to buy top shelf liquor, Rolex watches, and they're just beautiful cars. It's pretty obvious. I mean, sure, there's mixed races there. I mean, it's mixed up, but mostly minorities here, white, older males here. Women cannot be in a position of power. Women have to be in subjection to their husbands and obey their husbands. The expectation is that the husband will show loving kindness to his wife, like they say in the Bible, but they actually don't have to. There's no obligation for the man to actually do it. He'll get counseling from the elder. Get this. If a man cheats on his wife, the wife is supposed to find out what she did wrong to cause him to cheat and try to do better. And the man, if he cheats on her, he gets private counsel. And then they don't say his name in church. They say her name in church. So-and-so cheat. I'm not sure if they still do this because someone said recently. It was until recent, at least 2016 that they were still doing this. But someone said recently they issued a new elder's handbook where now, before they could not, they weren't, I don't know if they were told not to, but they weren't told to recommend if a child got raped. They weren't told, or even a woman, they weren't told to tell the person that they could file a police report. And now it's in their elder's handbook that they have to because they're getting sued to oblivion. And that's one reason the privately owned kingdom halls that you see around are getting sold. And what's happening is they were owned by the church members. And they were run and maintained by the church members. Cleaned, everything. So the Jehovah's Witnesses leadership has changed because now they have all these lawsuits for all the pedophilia crimes that they hid. So they get all these lawsuits to handle. So what they're doing is they're asking the community to sign the church over to them. And then they're selling these churches. And I'm like, oh my God. And Jehovah's Witnesses are just lapping it all up like, blah, blah, blah. And they always use the light gets brighter. Like, the light gets brighter and they change their mind about what was. And they make their new rules. And then the people are like, oh, we have to get on board with these new rules. And then they say the light gets brighter and the new rules, and the rules are completely opposite from the prior rules. And they're like, gobble, 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 we have to. And if they can be confused, they're smart people in that religion. They're very smart people in that religion, obviously, especially the ones that know how to manipulate people, right? But they're not allowed to express doubt. They're not allowed to ask questions. They're just supposed to have faith. And so, like, when you're in this peer situation, you can be the smartest one in the room. You could be saying, this is a lot of BS. What the hell are they doing? Like, thinking all these thoughts in your head. And, like, is this really the true religion? It sounds like a bunch of garbage at this point. And then you're looking at your auntie and your mom and your uncle and your dad. And you're going, oh, yeah. Because you know your uncle, your mommy, your auntie, and your dad will have to revoke all socialization with you. They can't see you. They can't talk to you. They can only handle family business. That's it. And even a husband and wife, she could choose to sleep in another room. So it's a horrible, horrible situation in this religion as far as the shunning goes. It's caused suicides, depressions. Jehovah's Witnesses are riddled with chronic depression, and no wonder. They're supposed to be perfect. This religion appeals to people with borderline personality disorder, specifically the queen type, because in public, the queen knows how to crack the whip and keep all those kids in order. And she has the religion to back her up. Children must obey their parents. Children must reflect positively on the parents. So the one good thing about having a borderline personality mom that's queen is that when we were in public and she was behaving like the perfect mom, I benefited from that. I got treated well in front of other people. The charade was for other people, but I loved it, and it sort of became habit for her. And so as I dug out my personal life when I turned, I think I was 18 when I first moved out, and then I was kind of bounced back and forth, and I get a little bit older, 20 something, and like, I have my own place, she can't come in without permission. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. She came into my home without permission. I guess she had knocked. I was in the back room. I had a boyfriend. We were all the way in the back. My mom comes into our bedroom. We are busy. Oh, was I mad. I was like, there was like kaboom. Years of resentment just splattered against the walls, like, oh my God, are you seriously, she said, I thought you guys were telling me to come in. At that point, I did ask her to leave. I calmed down. I asked her to leave. I told my boyfriend, I'm like, this is insanity. I had a decent job at the time. I had health insurance. So I went to see a counselor, and I started telling her these crazy things my mom is doing. And my mom did not want to give up control over my life just because I turned 18. That was out of the question. The counselor's like, I'm in there a few sessions, and she's like, it's just an armchair diagnosis, but your mom sounds like a textbook case of borderline personality disorder. And I'm like, what is that? And she started to explain to me, and she knew I would relate that to my mom. And she said, you really need to set boundaries. For a while, I want you to only see her at holidays. And then as you learn to set boundaries, we can work on seeing her more frequently. And I'm like, yes. So I tell my mom this because now it's like, my counselor said I could only see you. and she like, your counselor's lying. Those people lie. And there's nothing wrong with me. And I said, Mom, have you ever considered getting treatment? Like, have you ever thought about just having someone to talk to? And she's like, oh, nothing wrong with me. I did set the boundaries. That's exactly what I did. I followed the counselor's advice, and things did start to get better. I learned that I could say no to my mom. I learned that I could set boundaries. It was still a struggle, but especially Jehovah's Witness religion teaches parents to be very controlling. But she definitely weaponized the religion against me. I felt obligated to follow her word and her instruction into my adulthood. I always believed mental illness or counseling, I thought all of that should be stigma-free. Any treatments, whatever. I had anxiety from it. So obviously I still struggle with anxiety, some PTSD effects from the variety of things that happen in life. But I love my mom dearly. After the boundaries were set, after we started to get along better, what I was saying about the queen thing working well for me was that she loved everything to look great when we were in public. So we would go shopping, and it would just be like scenes out of a movie, and we'd go to cafes and have coffee, and we'd go to little bistros and have dinner, and it was great. That part was great. It really was. So I love my mom dearly, and eventually she did get therapy, and it wasn't until she was in her 60s that she finally told me, my doctor thinks I have borderline personality disorder. And I was like, well, what do you think of that? And she's like, well, she started talking about her magical thinking and how she just wanted everything to be perfect and it couldn't be. And I don't recall I can't remember right now if she did specifically accept the diagnosis or not, but I think she did. I got the impression she did. Let's fast forward now. It's 2020. What's going on with the Jehovah's Witnesses? Why you may have noticed on your friends list or in your family circles that they're suddenly more vociferous about being anti-gay. And they're suddenly like anti-Black Lives Matter. And they're suddenly anti-choice and about the apocalypse. And I realized it took a long time. I'm like, there's somebody catapulting into areas of prejudice that I never saw Jehovah's Witnesses do before. I could count on Jehovah's Witnesses if they saw a gay couple keeping their mouth shut, right? I could count on Jehovah's Witnesses if they felt a thing about an interracial couple, they'd keep their mouth shut. I date men from around the globe, no issues with the racism that I see in other people, but at least you could count on manners. And all of a sudden, it wasn't applying anymore. And then I started to see some of their leaked videos, the things that they're showing secretly at their conventions. And this happened since 2016. And what does 2016 remind you of? A certain person in a hospital at the moment down with COVID-19 for not wearing masks? That little person? So I'm piecing things together. I see some of the leaked videos. Like, one is you can no longer associate with members that have just drifted away. So you have these family members, they're good people, and they've drifted away. They don't go to meetings anymore, but they still say they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and they don't do anything that offends you. You now are supposed to shun them. You're now not supposed to socialize with them. You're supposed to judge them as worldly. And all of a sudden, if you see gay activity going on, you're supposed to speak up, and you're supposed to say things about what the Bible says. And then I saw some of the leaked videos that they're showing to children of the apocalypse and how people will be hiding in bunkers and Jehovah's Witnesses will be persecuted. And I'm like, what? This is like PG-13 level stuff, probably a little bit higher for children that are scared of horror movies. And I'm watching and I'm going, they're actually showing this to kids, because when I was a kid, I do remember some of the imagery being very upsetting to me. Some of the drawings, they were just drawings back then, being very upsetting. Some of them are seared into my brain. They were so upsetting. I'm like, what is going on with them? And oh, the money's really shuffling, because it was secret that they owned all this luxury property in the United Kingdom. It was just kind of hush hush. It was for their best people, their people that were visiting, and people that they were forming relationships with, right? And I'm like, whoa. Well, one of the first things they did was they made this big sale to Jared Kushner. And this guy is like all about the 666. It's right in their Bible. They're always teaching, be afraid of the guy that's 666. He has like 666 stamped on his forehead because of his property that was 666. And they're not scared of him at all. No, he comes in, he buys their property, he makes a commercial for the Jehovah's Witnesses. He's trying to get a back channel to Russia. And some of this, so I'm going to be a little bit more clear about what's reality. That's confirmed. Jared was trying to get a back channel to Russia. Confirmed that Jared, who is video shy, made a video complimenting the Jehovah's Witness. These are all real. Apocalypse bunker video, real. Showing images of the apocalypse to children, real. Telling children that all their friends will die who haven't come into the truth, real. And so I'm like sitting here going, I got like this mellow, my brothers are mellow. So it's like, I'm not hearing all this drama from them. I'm hearing it from Twitter. I have a lot of Twitter pals that like, they stay on top of the news and they keep an eye on cults, and they're like, something's changing here. And suddenly they're selling off all this property, and they're embroiled in all the times that they hid the pedophilia. Okay, I have thoughts on that too. This is my theory. Okay, so Trump was running around trying to assure all these religions, especially evangelicals, I'm the one for you. And we, from all of our research, now I can't confirm it absolutely, but DeVos, you can look into it yourself. It makes it likely Trump was promising an apocalyptic ending for them. They wanted it. That's why so many were saying Trump is the second coming of Jesus. And Jehovah's Witnesses are not that big as far as a proportion of religion, so why would you need all of that? It turns out they're very wealthy, so they're really fighting these lawsuits. They've recently told Jehovah's Witnesses to no longer refer to themselves as members, but rather to refer to themselves as individuals. And no, I'm not drinking. I'm in a bedroom where it's cold, and my neck and lips are getting progressively more and more numb. as I speak. So Jared Kushner went on this black channel to Russia. So this is my theory, that one of the things on his laundry list of wish list of things that he wanted from Russia was for them to label Jehovah's Witnesses as an extremist organization, so that Jehovah's Witnesses could claim they were a persecuted religion and further keep their religion going, because it's starting to fall to pieces. In 1975, that was supposed to be the end. All the bad people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses were supposed to be dead. Oh, and that's another trauma from school. I was supposed to be in school imagining all my classmates dead because I was the only one with the truth. We couldn't do the Pledge of Allegiance either, which, you know, back then they didn't actually bother me about that. So my theory is Jared Kushner made a little like side deal of all. He has this laundry list of the evil world leaders of wishes, and one of them, I think, my guess, was to Russia, please label the Jehovah's Witnesses as extremists. And this was probably a handshake between him and the leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses. Then they'll truly have an apocalypse scenario. We'll have more of that money flowing. They'll become true believers again. And if the world really does end, who cares? We're all rich. We're all going to heaven. There you have it. Like, all these changes came about, and if you see your relatives who were once politically neutral, all of a sudden being pro-Trump, anti-Black Lives Matter, anti-choice, and just being really loud about it, and reposting Fox News and Candace Owens, that's because the Jehovah's Witnesses, on the sly, in my theory, and I think you can see there's a lot of evidence, especially if you go on YouTube, look for the ones that are fact-based, not for the ones that are like not using facts. Anyway, yeah, I have a feeling that they wanted this apocalypse scenario, or at least the threat of it, to revive membership, to revive people having faith. So if you stuck around this long, you get to hear the latest update just recently. I think it was a few days ago, maybe a week or two ago. At most a couple months, I don't know. That the leader, oh gosh, what's his last name? His first name's Tony. I forget his last name, but it's out there. And he recently called people who leave the Jehovah's Witness Church, called them maggots and pigs. That's what we are. We're supposed to be maggots and pigs. And they want us to come back. Well, guess what? No way. And so if you have a Jehovah's Witness religion that's pushing Fox News down your throat, I love Trump down your throat, all this other stuff under their own guidelines of them being a worldly person and a bad influence, you can say goodbye and don't weigh yourself down. I think because I had moved when I was 16 and I had been ripped from my family and my culture and my area, but I loved the new area. And I had no friends at first, right? The idea of being alone didn't terrify me. So when you decide to leave, just think the thoughts in your head. Don't tell anyone except maybe an outside confidant that will not gossip to your Jehovah's Witness relatives. Get your footing and even think about moving away and starting over, because you won't fall. I mean, you'll have sad days, you'll have good days, you'll have bad days, but you can be a good person. You can be a person of faith and go find a non-denominational religion. Become any religion that you want, or be like me. I never want to be associated with religion ever again in my life, obviously, but you can still be a good person. You can still volunteer, you can still be kind to people, you can still watch your language, you can still, be fair in relationships and be kind and well-mannered. They filled you with these thoughts in your head that you're just going to boomerang out there, and anyone who's listening to this or shares this, or don't only share in confidence, I'm way too shy, I'll probably freak out. You will be strong. You will stand on your 2 feet. You will find new friends. And if your family misses you, they will reach out to you. You will be okay. And there's loads of support online. If you decide to leave, you're going to be okay. And you can be a good person. The Jehovah's Witnesses have psyched you out. They use brainwashing techniques. And that was the first, I forgot to tell you a little story of how I originally mentally escaped. I mentally escaped at the age of 11. I ran into a fellow at an assembly And he saw me walking, and for some reason at that time, I was like almost clinically depressed as a child. I'm not prone to depression as an adult, but as a child, I was so depressed I could barely smile. I was so depressed I thought of just laying on the floor and never getting up and just dying on the floor. I was so depressed that my mom had told me later that she's like, around the time you were 11, I remember telling your dad we needed to take you to see someone because you were so depressed. And she's like, then something snapped you out of it. I met someone at an assembly. It was an older gentleman. And actually, he wasn't that much older. He seemed older. I was 11. He was 21. Anyway, he saw me and he's like, you look really, like, you don't look like you're happy. What's wrong? And back then, men could talk to girls. Now people would be like, oh my God, a man's talking to a girl. And he's like, what's wrong? And I started telling him how I didn't believe this religion. I didn't want to be here, and I wasn't happy. I started like spilling my guts, and no, there was nobody around to see me. I know at a later assembly, my mom saw me with him, and she's like, called me over. She's like, get over here. Like, who are you talking to? But at that one, no one saw me. It was one of the big ones. It was one of the Pontiac Silverdome, which is no longer, I think it's been torn down or sitting abandoned. He says to me, I'm not really a Jehovah's Witness. I just come here for family and I pretend. And he says, I haven't been a Jehovah's Witness in a really long time, and I don't let them control me. She says, you only have to pretend until you're 18, and then you can leave. I was reading 2 years above my grade level at that time. And he said to me, do you like to read? And I said, yes. And he said, well, see if you can find a book on brainwashing. And that's what I did. And then I started seeing all the techniques they used and how similar they were to the ones that the Jehovah's Witnesses used. And from that point forward, I was just pretending. Emotionally, I had left at the age of 11, but you have to go through the motions until you're old enough to actually leave. And you still have to go through, on top of your own studies, the studies for the Watchtower, the studies. I remember too, they had this big debate on if we had to wear skirts to the Tuesday meeting. Because Tuesday meetings were only an hour. They would let us come in pants. They would let women wear pantsuits. And they made a decision. No, now you have to wear skirts to Tuesday night for 1 hour. You have to get dressed, put on makeup when you're old enough. Like, they weren't against makeup. They were against heavy makeup, but they weren't against makeup. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the pedophilia part. The pedophilia part that I observed, which I think pedophile would be a stretch. Child marriages would be more appropriate. I wasn't hanging around with the worst people in the church. I wasn't ever left alone with men in the church. Outside of the church, but not in the church. And so I didn't experience those horrific things that other girls experienced. But I did observe this, that the flirtation started about the age of 14, and older men that were being flirted with by the younger girls would take it way too seriously. Like, they're just trying on clothes, they're trying to get their makeup right, they're just trying to be women, like the religion keeps telling them to be. They've gotten their periods, and these men were taking it way too seriously, and some of them were eyeing them for a bride when they came of age, and that did happen. And especially I heard from one of the YouTube videos from a guy that used to be in Bethel, that male or female, they were preyed on quite a bit by the older males. You'd see elders with these little young 18-year-old wives. Now, elders can start about 35, so they might not be that old, but some of them got really up there. And I do remember the time my grandma cried to me. She was a Jehovah's Witness. She was a widow twice over, and she had her eye on a man that was widowed. He is a widower, and he ended up marrying a much younger woman. No surprise, there's 8 females for every male in the congregations. And women are just told to be patient, God will provide. Usually what they end up doing is dating someone on the outside and convincing him to be a witness just long enough to get married when he freaks out and runs, right? So, yeah, she cried like it was my turn. And it just gave me the impression that because there were so many women to men, that when a man became free, the women were lined up, and because he was her age, she was next in line because she was the oldest female near his age. It was her turn. She wasn't lying. It was her turn. And that young girl came and swooped in. I actually met her. She swooped in. She's nice enough. She probably had no idea. Yeah, it was really gross to see. The other thing that was really gross, because I was already leaving, like I was already gone in my head. The other thing that was really gross for me was how the men were so outnumbered. Men were so scarce in the religion that these young girls, 14, 15, 16, would start. Usually it was in high school that they started. They would flirt with a boy and convince him. They couldn't hold hands till they had a chaperone. They couldn't go on dates unless they had a chaperone, and they couldn't date unless it was for the purpose of seeing if they were good enough to get married. So what the girls would do, and this was endorsed and pushed by their parents, because there were so few men and they needed to get them married off. If they didn't go into missionary work, then they had to get married. And so these girls would flirt with someone in high school, convince the guy to study, tell him this whole shebang. Yeah, we are dating to get married. We'll take it slow. We'll have a chaperone. And like, I think you could kiss when you were engaged. I can't remember all the rules, but kissing was discouraged, and you could kiss when you were engaged, but you still needed a chaperone, and the chaperone thing went away when you got married. It was ridiculous. And so they're getting married like child brides. I mean, I know that 18 is technically legal, but when you're raised in a religion where your parents tell you every move you can make, and they dictate every aspect, you haven't adulted yet. When I went out to be an adult, I knew nothing. It was like you threw me in water and I didn't know how to swim. And so I felt so bad. It was so gross. I mean, what ended up happening, which I only saw as I got older and I saw evidence, is that because these men, these very young men, children, weren't fully mature, they tended to attract mentally ill teens that had not resolved their mental illness or gotten treatment, and it ends in disaster. Like, they are only witnesses long enough to get the marriage certificate, and then they're whoever they're going to be. If they're going to be a wife beater, they're a wife beater. If they're going to run around on the woman, they're going to run around on the woman. If they're going to rape their wife, they're going to rape their wife. Whoever they were, that's who they're going to be. If they were destined to be a drug dealer and do drugs, whatever baggage they're bringing with them from the need to date so young with the goal of marriage, there is something wrong. It is not we're not living in the dark ages. I hope that gives you an overview. I hope that if you have relatives right now that are exhibiting signs of being radicalized by Jehovah's Witnesses, the apocalypse thing doesn't have to happen. They just needed it to keep the membership high. I don't know if the leaders actually want it or not, but they're getting pretty old, so they might be like, what the heck, we're rich, we have a lot of stuff, we're bored, why not die? It could be like that, and take a lot of people with us, we'll be famous. I hope you can save them. I hope this message reaches, like I always say, if whatever you write or put out there reaches one person, it was worth it.